It's officially 10 a.m. So let's go ahead and start. Before you start, I'm just going to introduce you. So today we are here for the presentation of Teaching Generative AI Empower Student Growth. And we have Dr. Caitlin Weber today to talk about it. And she is an instructional assistant professor in the Department of Agricultural Economics in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. And she began to teach at Texas A&M in fall 2022. She graduated from Kansas State University in agricultural with a PhD in agricultural economics, and she teaches several courses focused on agricultural and product marketing, agribusiness management, and farm and ranch management. So, without any delay, I will give it to you, Caitlin.
Perfect. Thank you for that introduction. I really appreciate it. So to dive right into what my the Hear from Peers session and what my generative AI project was this semester or past semester now with students was really all about empowering student growth. So to give a little bit of background on what that looked like for me specifically. So some of that background and motivation was the course that I implemented this project in was our agribusiness management course. It's a junior level class in our department. It averages about 240 students a semester. It's an extremely large class, which comes with a lot of additional complexities and challenges, trying to integrate a really strong, active learning process and integrating those things that we're discussing consistently in the CTE department. How do we integrate those in the classroom and make it effective for things that are that large? It was a really big challenge for me. So this is truthfully probably one of my least favorite classes to teach. So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to implement a project and shake some things up. So the motivation for this project ended up with our College of Agricultural and Life Sciences students. We have, with that class being so large, I really wanted to know what our actual adoption rate is looking like. Where are we at number-wise? What is their perception? What are their actual practices in terms of implementation and what we're looking at? And we, as Jamie mentioned, shouldn't use AI to help generate slides because then we get typos. So excuse that, but our perception and practices. So we'll talk a little bit more about what the assignments looked like here in just a second, but I really wanted to just combine generative AI and to give students more of a personalized learning experience. There we go. So what did that look like? Breaking this course down into our 4 key functions of management, we start out with marketing management, go into financial, human resource, and supply chain management. So that's the foundation of what this course is built on, using different course materials. But the challenge with this class, we know there's a large class, but we have upwards of about 40% on average non-majors in this course. So we have anywhere from students in poultry science. There we have our financial planning, AgX students, and our agribusiness students. I have ag systems management students, ag leadership students, with wide varieties, wildlife management students this semester. So trying to bring those students coming from varying backgrounds all together, how do we make it work? How do I make this classroom effective? So I really wanted to combine that personalized learning experience, but trying to do that on a large scale of 240 students is almost impossible. So how did I do it? We began with an entry survey. It was 15 questions, which I learned the very hard way that Canvas using new quizzes does not allow you to export quiz results into an Excel document. So learned that the hard way this semester. But the kind of meat and potatoes of this project was 5 different assignments throughout the semester, focusing on student management. It allowed them to personalize their experience, and then we ended with a short exit survey. But their first assignment, and I really wanted to go through the finer details of how I implemented it with the Hear from Peers session, because that was most helpful for me to generate ideas of how I could apply it in the classroom. So ultimately, the assignment started with students coming up with their own business idea. They had this business idea and they used it through the entirety of the semester. It could be something that they had an idea. Maybe they have a little bit of an entrepreneurial streak. They really want to do something there. Or maybe it was something, they have a family business, a family farm and ranch. Some students did some high fence ranches, and another did a spa. Because of the diverse backgrounds, and somebody like myself coming from a very strong production agricultural background, some of the examples that I'm using in an ag ed class, they don't relate to, but that's where I come from. Trying to meet those students in the middle, diversifying examples and working through different things works effectively to a point, but they just weren't connecting with some of the ideas. This was last fall when I implemented the project, was the third semester that I had taught the course. So thankfully I had taught it enough to know kind of the ins and outs of the course material, but I just didn't see this connection. So allowing them to do their own business with any capacity was my approach for the learner-centered pedagogies of trying to get them to relate with what the course fundamental learning objectives were to integrate with themselves. So first assignment was they walked through everything on their own. And then they also used whatever source of Gen AI that they proposed. I didn't care if they used ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot. I gave them resources to integrate each of them in a Canvas folder, but let them have some creative freedom there. Business name, description, mission, logo. So they got to use some image generators as well. They learned how much they hated them. And then the critical thinking side of this was that one, they had to rate each of these projects. And then they had to start discussing them. So they would go through their own projects, answer their questions on their own, and then ask ChatGPT. We'll use that one for example. A lot of their grade depended on the discussion, where I wanted them to critically think about what did ChatGPT do well? What it did not do well? How can we use it as a positive tool as opposed to relying on it as a crutch? So first assignment was pretty basic, but I was also able to use it with the first few introduction slide decks in that course to do some things that in an alternative format. So I was able to have students complete a DISC assessment. I gave them a canned prompt. As we can see over here, all they had to do was copy and paste this within the materials. So they copy pasted that. And with that, every single student was given the same exact 20 questions. We tested it across a handful, and they weren't exactly, but the structure was almost identical enough that I trusted the process. We had some of the student workers here in our department ran through it several different times, and it worked really well. And that allowed these students to not have to pay for a DISC test. It allowed them to get their results and have a summary at the end where they were able to learn more about themselves without having to pay for the actual DISC assessment. That's something that I thought we used to do through the university, but turns out that's no longer provided for students anymore. And I was not about to make them pay for a DISC test. The online ones are unreliable and a little sketchy. So we turned to ChatGPT and it worked beautifully. So I took that from assignment 1 to assignment 2. Assignment 2 is all about business structure. So learning some of the agribusiness management fundamentals, even more, reiterating them. Are they going to organize as an LLC or do they need to be a corporation? You want a sole proprietorship versus, we even talked about co-ops in that class as well. Some of them decided that they were going to partner with some buddies and they wanted to try to work to form a co-op. This assignment, the way that it was structured through the project all the way through the semester, gave a lot of creative freedom. Not a lot of rigidness, but students were able to personalize it to themselves. And every single one said they felt like they learned more about the process because they were relating it to a business idea that they understood and not a cow-calf operation all the time or a horse operation or a poultry business or a hog farm. They understood it a little bit better. With assignment 2, we also talked about expanding into international markets where they had regulatory challenges, market entry issues, whether they wanted to like fully export and import products, or if they want a greenfield venture, things like that. And then any cultural considerations that they may have if they were a cow-calf operation, looking at meat consumption in different countries. I was trying to expose some of those students to some of that, as well as risk management. With the risk management side of things, we talked about business risk. A lot of risk may come with a lot of reward, but it may come with failure as well. They were required to research other companies that did what they did and how successful they were, as well as with the agribusiness management. The assignment 3 was a SWOT analysis. So that's a fundamental part of a SWOT, with that SWOT analysis for their own business and going through the 4 Ps with our product, price, place, and promotion. They were required to do each of these in detail, going all the way through a sales forecasting for a specific product that they chose within their business. But I didn't want to bore you with a whole lot more of white slides here with that assignment, but each assignment was structured very similarly, where you were required to answer the question on your own. You're required to put the same information into ChatGPT and see and let me know what that response was. Each response was rated with a 1 through 5 of whether you agree, strongly disagree to strongly agree on that you felt ChatGPT's response or whatever generative AI tool that you chose was good and informative. And then you were required additionally to take that one step further with the critical thinking side of discussing what you agreed and disagreed with as well. Assignment 4 was a financial management. They had to make fake financial statements. So each business was required to think through their startup costs. We did fake income statements and fake balance sheets. And the interesting thing with this was it not only gave students a perspective of the business challenges, but also the real world startup costs that they may be facing that have now been, where students are facing a lot of challenges as they're graduating. And it just really helped to bring it back to the real world, personalize it for them. And it was really interesting to read what students were finding going through all of this. They were able to calculate financial ratios, and then based on their financial ratios, use ChatGPT or a generative AI program to act as a consultant to say, these are what my financial ratios are. How do I improve? So again, using positive reinforcement with Gen AI tools as opposed to a negative connotation. And then assignment 5 was finishing up with our supply chain and operations management issues. We did combine human resource and supply chain into one assignment just because we were at the tail end of this semester. And then the funnest thing that I think students really enjoyed was talking about human resource issues. Managing people is tough, and it's something that they're all going to go into if they pursue a management type position where they're going to have challenges. I had a student that was really interested in this project, and he brought an idea to me and was like, hey, what about doing this? If a student comes up with their own human resource problem, they plug it into ChatGPT and say, I need help solving this issue. The responses were spectacular, meaning that ChatGPT would go through the problem, keeping in mind laws that a company might be subject to or things like that, and would actually go all the way through giving students canned responses of suggestions on how they may phrase things. So if I get an email that I don't know how to answer, I might plug in, how do I answer this in a more professional way or a more stern way? Because I struggle being that with students a little bit more. So I played on that of how I'm personally using ChatGPT to help students to, again, with that positive reinforcement with their project as well. We finished up with an exit survey and then moved on into kind of where we're going from here. So where we're going from here is grading efficiencies. I'm kind of short on time, so I'm just going to gloss over this. We'll come back. If you have any questions, I'm happy to share more on that. But where to now? So the project was actually so successful and students enjoyed it so much based on what I heard back on evaluations in the class that I'm doing it again this semester. They felt that the combination of being able to personalize their learning experience with the course projects of what we were doing, it really allowed them to grow in their knowledge of not only the material, but the industry that they may be interested in. Especially with our financial planning students, which is a major now in our department, students, a lot of them are really interested in a financial business. They wanted to go into opening their own business. And I think it was very eye-opening for a lot of them to see the challenges that they may face as a future business owner. And the Gen AI programs brought a lot of insight to, things, articles that are obviously published now, but it just saved so many steps for those students to bring it all together to see it in one place. So grading efficiencies with this project, with this many students, each of them having their own project, was not good. I kind of set myself up for failure with that. We pivoted a little bit during the semester, but it just didn't work 100% the way I wanted it to. So now, given some scheduling issues, I'm gone for a team competition for a week in April. So instead of having somebody guest lecture for that week in April, we actually combined it into a little bit more of one project. So students get to work on it. Now, once they've had that material, we'll have structured summative feedback homeworks through those materials. But then after they've completed 2 modules, they'll get to do this project to reinforce these concepts again before they take their cumulative final. So it'll kind of be a quick review using their own project closer to the final to review that prior material. Hopefully having it in one will give me one longer project with 240 of them to grade, as opposed to 5 homework assignments that were 7 to 8 pages on average of 240. I learned my lesson that way. But on a research standpoint of that, we actually redesigned to do this survey for students, and it just was submitted for IRB approval. So to hopefully get that published with those survey results from students. So we have a whole new group. I have 242 students this semester. It was submitted to IRB so that we can hopefully get those adoption practices and some of that data that we were able, the prompt generation questions, so that the qualitative and the quantitative side of things combined. So it was a really quick rundown of what my project looked like. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a really good learning experience for me. I think students really enjoyed it as well. I had really good feedback on it. But happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I would like to ask one question. When you were talking about the DISC test, so how do you ensure that it's the same question that comes for or similar questions that comes for all the students?
So they're not identical. We
Okay.
tried several different times to go through that precisely. I think the undergrad students in the office were sick of me because I made them do this probably 30 times each. I wanted to do that. So I made them go through it several times, each of them, and the results for each of those students, there were five or six of them across the department. I've recruited a couple people. They went through them about 30 times each, and they got the same results every time. I gave the caveat in the assignment and announced it in class several times as well. Like, obviously, if you're going to tell somebody what type you are, maybe pay for it and get the extended version with all of the results and everything. But this was really just a easy, quick, free alternative for students to take the test. And it was consistent enough that I trusted it, but again, gave the caveat of, before you go tell your boss XYZ, maybe pay for the version just to confirm. So it was the goal was just to really get students to learn more about themselves in the process, because a lot of them are really, especially in that large of a classroom, they struggle to get out of their shells. And we were able to talk about leadership versus management, break them into groups and give them scenarios of, okay, so I put each one of each type in a group. gave them a problem in class and said, don't share your information. So we did a kind of a think, pair, share with a group of 4 with each type, gave them a scenario, gave them the opportunity to think through how they would respond to that based on their leadership of how they are as a person. And then they were able to share. So we kind of used it as like a starting benchmark, not as an end all be all, but I trusted it enough for it to be free.
Thank you for your answer. Udard?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm curious, so what size will your teams be in going forward?
So the project itself, is still an individual. Everybody was an individual project, which is, I'll be honest, brutal to grade.
Uh,
But I have it due a few weeks before, about 3 weeks before grades are due, to give myself enough time to get through them. I know that we've gotten through enough material in the class for them to be successful in completing the project, but I decided to do it with on an individual basis just because students' interests differ so dramatically in that class. It is by far the most diverse major class that I teach, and it is almost impossible. As students, I cannot even exaggerate how wild students' projects were. I had one from custom hay operations, from cattle operations, backgrounding yards, like very production agricultural focused, to financial planning firms, to med spas. And a couple of them did restaurants. So we're talking broad, like very, very broad. The groups that they were broken into were just very like think, pair, share type assignments. 4-ish on average worked really well. I do teach that class. It's in PLPM 106, so relatively easy to kind of get up and move around and do some group work things in there. But the assignments that they were submitting on those were grouped through iClicker. So I was able to assign those, and then they were able to submit their thoughts on iClicker and then see everybody's results, as opposed to it being like a hard homework assignment, if that makes sense.
oh, great. And this may be a naive question on my part, but why do you need to submit for IRB approval?
So to submit for IRB approval, because the goal is to eventually publish it. So, and since we're soliciting survey results from students, it requires an IRB approval. It does fall into the exempt category, but because it is, and there's nothing associated with grades in the study, so no grade, no nothing, no personal identifier information, but it is using survey results. I asked demographic, I asked their major, I asked their gender, I asked a couple of questions for some identifiers for some demographic information, so that we can use that to correlate with adoption practices. And that's what requires that IRB approval.
Thank you. Very nice.
Any other question or comment? Did your RB get approved already?
It is not through the process yet. I am praying and hoping that it gets through. So I have it slated right now on the syllabus that I am gone for. I'm the NAMA advisor for students. And go ahead and stop sharing this. I'm the NAMA advisor for our departmental competition team, and I am gone the first full week of April. So like the 7th through the 11th, and their assignment's not due till the 20th. So I'm like, okay, I have 3 months. Technically, really more like 2, but I'm hoping with the exempt status and everything, we should be okay. Hopefully, fingers crossed. What's gonna happen if, I mean, obviously we can do they'll do the assignment, but we just won't be able to publish anything if it doesn't go through that approval. I'm very by the book on that. I'm like, okay, if we're doing anything, I want the IRB approval, I want that exempt status, I want to be safe. So
And with the new system, which is Huron, it takes a little while.
Yes, it does. I had been trying to submit it for a while, and then all of that was when Huron was down. So that was very frustrating.
I know
But
you are waiting for the IRB, but have you looked at the data yet? Like, what do the students are saying?
so I had, yeah, I looked at last semester's. Hindsight's 2020. I probably, if I'm in that, right, hindsight's 2020. You always, I wish I would have. I wish I would have done it last summer, but I was in the not really sure. I actually wasn't slated to teach this class last fall. We had a professor, a lecturer in our department leave August 1st, and classes started shortly thereafter. So I was not on track to teach it. I was supposed to have a course release last fall, and it was like, nope, just kidding. So I had a whole nother project actually in another class with more like social media image generation, and had that designed. Scrapped it a little bit just because it was an online class, and the student feedback for the online section part of things was not good. They hated it. I don't know if it's just the disconnect of they wanted they wanted to answer their homework questions and be left alone type deal. With the online classes was very much the feedback that I got from students. So that was a little interesting. The in-class worked a lot better, but it was very flying by the seat of my pants last semester as we were designing homeworks. I told Dr. Thompson that I need to go in and fix my thing, because I completely deleted all of it on our project requirements because I had to scrap my other project. So it was very adjust on the fly, and it worked out really well. Regardless of IRB approval or not, hopefully that gets, because the statistics side of things, and that's why I didn't even want to share it. I know it's internal, but I didn't even want to share it here. The adoption rates were, you hear article after article after article on higher ed AI practices. 30% of students didn't even know what ChatGPT was in my class.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I think it was really eye-opening for me as a faculty member that was really like concerned about how the interaction of the AI side of things was going. I don't have problems with it. I don't. And I have right now this semester I have 682 students. And I can count on one hand how many I know for a fact those are AI papers have been submitted. So I think that just the entry survey results were probably one of the most interesting things to me, even just to see what those looked like, the adoption. So that's why I'm really hoping we get the IRB approval and are able to share those a little more publicly, because especially, granted, all of those students that are going through this class are College of Agricultural and Life Sciences students. So maybe that's affecting some of their adoption practices and things like that.
There might be differences in terms of college. I don't know, but yeah,
Exactly.
that's an interesting find. And what is more interesting is that the online people, like students, didn't like it as much as the in-person people. Yeah.
That's exactly. I thought it would be the other way. I thought they would be like, okay, well, you're in an online course. You're more, and I figured their adoption practices would be higher. Their perceptions of it would be more positive. And it was actually the opposite, which was very interesting to me.
Any other thoughts or questions from the audience? If not, then we will end here for our session today. And thank you so much for coming and presenting, Caitlin. Hope to see you again soon and hear from peers.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone in this session is more interested or would like shared resources or anything, please reach out to me personally. I'm happy to do so.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.